Two, one. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Delusions of Grandeur. I am one of your hosts, but today we are back with films that have to do with I Spit on Your Grave, and this one is a direct sequel directed by Meir Zarchi. That's his name. And it was filmed in 2019, and it's called I Spit on Your Grave, Deja Vu. And it stars Camille Keaton, who is returning to the picture, and the role that she originally started as Jennifer Hales. And I'm just going to read here what IMDb says about the film, and then we'll go into our first impressions. So, cinema's top lethal lady vengeance returns in the most anticipated sequel of all time. That's all that it says about the film. So, this is a direct sequel to the original 1970, I believe, 8 film. 8 or 9, I believe that those were the years. And this basically ignores any sequel that
in reality,
may
30 years in one day since I've been back to school.
may have taken place after that.
Well,
But it definitely is set before. I would have to say this is definitely after the remakes that have happened.
yeah, well, that makes sense since I Spit on Your Grave 2 and 3 are sequels to the remake, not to the original, so this one doesn't have to take the remake and its sequels into account.
Yeah, it definitely doesn't take any of the remakes into in account. So it basically bypasses all of that, and Meir Zarchi is finally giving us his long-awaited sequel to the original film. So, what were your first impressions of this film?
Well, my first impressions were kind of mixed, I must say. First of all, the movie is very long, but it's definitely not boring. It's pretty much intense from the beginning to the end. And I must say it's somewhat less painful to watch than the original, which is good. Although there were some things in the plot that kind of ruined it for me personally, but we will get into that later probably.
Okay. So was that basically your first impression?
I guess.
Well, I watched this film a month ago when I first got it, and I ended up seeing it again today with you, and I definitely feel like there are moments where it's definitely can be gruesome, but I still feel like the first film was effective,
More
effective. I feel like the rapes were more effective. I feel like, I mean, he definitely tried in this film. It's not like he didn't. I mean, we have the wife of Johnny. We have the wife of Johnny.
Yes.
We have the father of Matthew. We have the brother of Stanley, and we have the cousin of Andy. Andrew, or Andy, or Andrew, or whatnot. And that would be Becky, Herman, Kevin, and Scotty.
Yeah.
But we also have Christy Hills, who appears to be a fashion model of some sort, who just so happens to have a dinner with her daughter. And I guess Jennifer Hills is going around doing a book signing of her new book. So, what do you think about Camille Keaton's character in here as Jennifer Hills? What do you think about her in this particular feature?
Well, she was fairly consistent with her character in the original, except for the fact that she encourages her daughter to do some nude photos and things like that. To me personally, that seems a bit unlikely for that a rape victim would encourage her daughter to do something like that. Well, I don't know, but I personally think someone who had that kind of experience wouldn't do that in real life.
Yeah, it's definitely a different side of her that we see here, because she's older. She has this daughter, and she's definitely trying to still keep going on with her life after many years of this happenstance that happened in the first film happened to her, and apparently she's doing all these rape speeches.
Yeah.
What do you think about Christy Hills, her daughter?
Well, she seemed okay for the most part, except for one scene later on. Maybe I shouldn't mention it yet because it's one of the major spoilers, but there was one thing she did that kind of ruined her for me as a character, which is my main issue with this movie, because we will get into what she did, but there was one character who I think shouldn't have ended the way he did, and if Christy, just like her mother in the previous movie, is supposed to be a character taking justice into her own hands, then this one thing she did is kind of beyond justice, if you ask me, because one of the characters who was in this whole situation didn't really do harm to her, while some others were raping her. He tried to help her. He actually did set her free and help her escape, but then when she came for them, she killed him just the same, in spite of the fact that he helped her escape. Well, okay, I said I shouldn't say it before we get into that scene, and now I said it, but yeah, that's it.
Okay, so here's the plot line. Apparently, Jennifer Hills is in town, in the same town that apparently, or nearby, because I'm not sure exactly where that cafe is that they're having dinner at. It doesn't really say, but apparently she's somewhat nearby, and we we are introduced to Becky. First off, I think in the beginning of the film. What do you think about Becky as a character?
Well, first of all, I have to say the actress who played her did an amazing job. Well, pretty much everyone in this movie did a really good job portraying their emotions, but especially her. And as a character, at the very beginning, actually, I felt somewhat sorry for her because what we saw was a woman grieving her deceased husband, and as far as it was presented to us at the very beginning, it seemed like she wasn't really aware that her husband had raped Jennifer before she killed him. Becky seemed to have thought that Jennifer had seduced him and then just killed him for her own sadistic pleasure or something like that. What we as audience who have seen the first movie know is far from the truth, but at first it seemed like Becky wasn't really aware of everything that happened and that her motives seemed rather understandable at the beginning, but then as the story went on, we realized that she, just like most other characters in this movie, they did know what happened. After all, they did know that Jennifer was raped, but it seemed like they didn't take the concept of rape seriously enough. Like in the town where they grew up, like no one. It seemed as if no one knew the idea of saying no to someone who wants to have sex. Like they didn't seem to understand the severity of the act of rape, and so they thought that the murders Jennifer committed weren't justified, which, from an average person's point of view, it was pretty much justified after what was done to her. And especially because those people would have probably done the same thing to many other women after her as well. Uh, so yeah, it's with these characters, it's a very complex situation. Like on one hand, they lost people important to them. They are grieving. You can somewhat understand how they feel, but then at the same time they are taking revenge for someone who did something really awful, and they knew what they did and they don't seem to take it seriously enough, which is why you cannot really justify them after all.
Plus, these characters seem more backwoods than the other characters as well. It seemed like the Stanley and Andrew and Johnny were a little bit more a little bit more intelligent, but not. I don't know how to say this, but it seems like these folks are a little bit more crazy.
Yeah, they all seem really backward and low IQ and things like that.
So, Herman is Matthew's father. What do you think about him?
Well, he is the one I mentioned earlier, the one I felt the most sorry for. Well, not the most, actually, the only one I feel sorry for. The others, after some things they did, they pretty much deserved what they got, but Herman, in my opinion, really didn't deserve getting killed. Okay, there was that one scene where he and Kevin attacked Christy together, and Herman was the one who ripped her clothes off. But then he realized that what he was doing was wrong. Also, we forgot to mention that just like his son Matthew, he seems to have severe mental disability, which his son probably inherited. Yeah, even with his mental disability, he realized that what they were doing was wrong, and he didn't. He refused to participate in raping Christie, which is even more than Matthew did in the original. Like in the original, Matthew didn't want to rape Jennifer, but they were pushing him, and he eventually did it. While in this movie, Herman didn't end up doing it. On the contrary, there was that one scene when he beat up all the three of them, Kevin, Scotty, and Becky, and he set Christy free and helped her escape, which is why I thought it was really unfair when she came back later and she killed him just the same. In my opinion, that ruined her as a character.
Okay. Well, as far as Matthew's father is concerned, I know that he's got some kind of mental disabilities or whatnot, or he's definitely slow, but he can articulate some speech patterns as a character. And Herman, he's played by Jim Tabaret. I think he plays that character rather well.
Definitely.
Because he's definitely got the stutter down and the old overalls, like a farmer, and I guess he played in Chuck and the series Chuck as a torturer, and Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban as Tom the Innkeeper. I guess so. That's some of his background. I mean, that's not all he's done, but he's definitely had a little bit a bit of a small career here. So, as far as the characters of I just recently saw Kevin, who's played by Jonathan Pesci, in a documentary recently. So it was kind of cool that he was very excited about being part of this production, and because the originals I Spit on Your Grave had such a history. It definitely was a dream role for him, from what I understand. So, as far as his character, I mean, it definitely. Oh man, he definitely brought some level of crazy there. Hey, Kevin.
Yeah, they all were pretty much crazy, but yeah, he was one of the crazier and one of the nastier ones in this movie.
Oh yeah. So Kevin apparently is one of the kidnappers, and I guess he is the brother of Stanley. And he has this white van that he ends up taking to that cafe, and I guess they lay him and what's his name, Scotty end up waylaying the mother, Jennifer Hills and Christy Hills, after their lunch together, and they go under the ruse of getting a signature for her new book, and they end up kidnapping her and then taking her off to some place to try to hang her, and then what do you think about that whole scenario there? The fact that they kidnapped her, was that right?
Uh, well, no, and I think it was a bit unrealistic because they did it in broad daylight in a place where there could have been other people around. Actually, funnily enough, when I was writing my novel, there is a kidnapping scene in the story, and while I was writing it, I was discussing it with an online friend of mine, and in the original version of what I was writing, the kidnapper also attacked the victim in broad daylight, put a gun at her back and told her to walk to the car. And then my friend told me it was something an intelligent criminal would never do. But yeah, then again, these criminals weren't really intelligent, so I guess it makes enough sense after all.
Definitely. Uh, what we have here is kind of a lynching. Apparently, they have a noose set up to try to hang her, hang Jennifer Hills, and we have a situation where they're trying to make her dig her own grave or something like that. And meanwhile, her daughter Christy is off being driven apparently back to New York, but she ends up eventually claiming that she needed to go to the bathroom, and she attacks Duke and tries to escape.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, back at the other place, the cabin in the woods or whatever, she apparently knocks them all on their feet and escapes herself, holding them at gunpoint. What do you think about that whole scenario there?
Well, actually, I think it was. I think that was a bit unrealistic as well because after everything that had been done to her, and especially as she knew that those people intended to kill her, Jennifer would have probably shot at them. She wouldn't have just run and given them a chance to come after her again and do more harm to her, which they eventually did, as we know. If she had a gun already, I think she would have shot them just to be safe.
And a little bit before that, we get Becky, who evidently has this heart-wrenching story about how she spent her nights alone, looking at where her husband had been, and how she thinks that she was a little seductress and kind of, you know, basically. Was her husband was supposedly so in love with her, and then she was the devil, and basically and killed him outright, even though the courts had made things turn out differently.
Yeah, that part where she has that speech, if I remember correctly, that was still when they were all together in the van, right?
Yeah,
That
that
was
was
the
when they were still together in the van, and she was taking the knife to the book and um, tearing it apart.
Yeah, that was the part that I originally mentioned, where at that point it seemed like she didn't really know that her husband had raped Jennifer before she killed him. That was the part of the story where I felt sorry for Becky because it seemed like she was unaware of what had happened and thought she was taking revenge for a genuinely innocent man, which is why I felt sorry for her at that point. But then later on, it turned out that she did know after all, which is what made her somewhat less sympathetic.
So ultimately, the band dispersed after Jennifer Hill's got got the gun, and basically the shoe was on the other foot, at least for the moment. So she was off running in the woods, and ultimately they eventually run her down in a cemetery. And I guess Becky eventually cuts her head off.
Yes.
And right before that, there's a little nod to like the Wizard of Oz, because there's this old lady, we don't even know who she is. She's honking the horn on a little tricycle, and she comes by, and she's like, "I'll get you, my pretty, and your little girl too."
Yeah, at that point, that seems maybe a little funny, which is why it's rather shocking when you discover that lady's real role in the story.
Yep. So, in any case, we have Christy, Christy Hills. She has escaped, but she eventually gets hunted down to, and eventually, I guess Herman starts to strip her of her clothes, and Kevin ends up actually taking his place, and we see him rape her for the first time. And
Yes.
I believe that he continues his rapings later, a little bit after this. But Herman seems to have started to become like somewhat of her savior, because he stops what he's doing. He sees the look in her eyes, and he's like, I don't want to do this, and I don't want to become like this evil person. And because he's his speech patterns are like broken, but you can see that he's trying to speak to God in his own way and say, I don't want to become this evil person, you know.
Yes.
So you can see him struggling with what is happening here. What do you think about Scotty as a person?
He seemed a little. He seemed like one of the goofier ones, and somewhat less sinister than some others, but he was still a part of the whole thing. Although maybe he was a bit of a comic relief character, because there is this one scene when Christy knocks him out in the woods and steals the van. That was a bit funny. And what else? Oh yeah, there was that scene when she was dealing with Kevin, when she was about to kill him, and Scotty was in the van listening to music and being completely unaware of what's going on.
Yeah, that was a little funny. How he heard him like starting to come, and he's like, "Dude, are you jacking off?" And literally, she just stabbed him with a broken piece of a bottle. So and then Scotty Too Hotty here, he he was going to come after her with a gun, but she shot him in the balls, and then I guess she shot him in the ass. I guess when he was down. So
Yeah.
you thought that there was some kind of a reference to maybe one of the remakes or something like that, hey?
Oh, yeah, well, it's possible because although this is a sequel to the original, it is newer than the remakes. The remake of the first one was made in 2010, and one of the characters there got shot in the ass as well, which is why I thought this might have been an intentional reference to that.
Alrighty. Well, now we are going back to Camille. And the way I think about this, or not Camille, Jennifer Hills. Camille's the actress.
Yeah.
The point in which where she actually gets picked up by an old couple, which later we find out that those are the parents of Johnny. And I love these two characters. I don't know why, but she's drunk as a fish, and he's just in la la land. And then eventually they turn into like these crazy fucks who end up they seem like they're nice folks, but then they take and drop a shovel on her head and try to bury her with her mother's body.
Well, that was what they did to Christy. That's not what they did to Jennifer.
No, Jennifer, on the other hand, was run down by Becky on a little scooter-like thing, and she eventually cut her head off and said, I give you the head of Jennifer Hills. And it reminded me of like John the Baptist a little bit, because of when the story of the king who cut the head off, and his daughter raised the head of John the Baptist and said, "I have here I have the head of John the Baptist." So
oh yeah, maybe it actually was an intentional reference, since most of these characters here from that town do seem to be some Bible thumpers.
yeah, religious fanatics, more or less, because they believe an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, and hell and brimstone kind, where you take justice into your own hand, and then God is your judge.
Yeah, I must say that's actually one of the things I somewhat like in the movie, because it portrays how hypocritical some religious people are. Well, not all of them, but many people are like that. Like they will always quote the Bible and say, God, this, Jesus, that. Like they will act like they are doing something good in the name of God, while they are actually hurting people. As Dean Winchester in Supernatural would say, God save us from half the people who think they're doing God's work.
Yeah, except here's the thing: most of them read between the lines and think their own type of bullshit, which is exactly what these people do. They take their religion to another level, and they believe that they are justified in doing whatever they can to take their vengeance upon Miss Hills and her daughter. Enough to the extent that the whole family is involved, the whole inbred breed.
More or less, yeah.
So, well, you kind of get some inbrededness here, because Becky certainly takes down and strips down and starts to do some sexual acts on Christy a little bit. So that's kind of inbrededish.
Oh, well, technically, she is not she is not related to Christie. She is just the wife of Christie's father.
Okay, that may be, but her she had kids with the husband that supposedly fathered that supposedly lead the seed came from.
Yeah, that's true.
So ultimately, we have a bit of craziness that seems to be going on, and I mean, even Kevin exhibits some type of craziness because suddenly his mind seems like it's very vulnerable because of the way he's been acting. It's like now that she's got him alone and stuff like that. That he's got like this dreams of flowers, and I guess she gave him a flower that supposedly means the forever flower or some shit like that, and whatnot. What do you think about that whole thing where it seems like his mind is just not straight. It just doesn't seem to be very lucid.
Yeah,
So to speak.
yeah, he definitely doesn't seem to be very lucid because earlier he was actually the one, and if I remember correctly, the only one who raped Christie, and then in this scene he seemed like he wasn't even aware that he had done something awful at that point, and he was here rambling about flowers and things like that. It seemed pretty much contradictory with the way he acted earlier.
And this was definitely a relatively long film. It was a two and a half, maybe 2 hours and 30
Uh,
like 8 minutes or
oh,
credits included. So
it
uh,
did.
I do think that the area locations were actually pretty decent. I thought that the gas station looked like it should have. Um, um, I, I thought that it was a little bit comical that they actually labeled the corpse of Jennifer Hills the bitch.
Well, it seemed like something people like them would do, like it's in their characters.
And as they would probably say, "What do you mean, people like them? what, what does
Yeah,
that mean?" You know.
yeah, you're a good impersonator.
But in any case, it's relatively kind of straightforward, though. I mean, the eventually we learn that the two old folks, older couple, the one woman that's always drinking, I guess that would be Hoagie Folster playing Millie Stillman, and Roy Allen third playing Henry Stilson or Stillman. That's the name
Yeah.
of and I guess Terry Zarchi, the son of the director, played Johnny Jr., the guy who eventually came towards the end there. He also played the voice of the radio announcer that we heard in the very beginning.
Oh, wow.
So that was kind of, and I guess Tammy Zarchi, I guess maybe the daughter of the director, played Melissa, who might actually be the other daughter of
Oh,
Becky's. So and Johnny's. So
that
um,
makes sense.
but ultimately we get a whole bunch of religious crap from Grandpa here. And
From pretty much everyone.
I guess they all really believe this nonsense that she is like the devil and shit, and they
E-
basically try to bury her in this graveyard. What do you think
e-
about that and that whole parade that they did, and all that bullcrap they
There are
did around the
four
opening parade?
crosses there for Andy, Johnny, Stanley, and Matthew, and the crosses looked rather handmade or something, which kind of made me wonder how come if other graves in the area look normal, how come those ones weren't like other graves as well. And yeah, on one of them there was a board saying something like that they were killed by a messenger of Satan or something like that, implying that Jennifer was that messenger.
Yeah. And ultimately, what do you think about what happened in the end here with Grandpa here? Do you think that he got his comeuppance in the end? Do you think what he did towards her, that what happened to him was justice?
Well, now that's kind of difficult to say. In a way, yes, because he tried to kill Christie, but then again, he didn't really participate in much of what happened before, and his grandson was murdered and everything, and he, just like everyone in the town, didn't seem to be a very sane person to begin with. But yeah, he tried to kill Christie, and he ended up getting killed. Well, he killed himself in the end. So yeah, I guess it's a fitting ending for him.
Yeah. Ultimately, yeah, he promised to, I guess, give her the body of her mother back, I guess, um, and in return, I guess she was supposed to kill him, and I guess that didn't happen. She was going to leave it up to leave him alive, so to speak. But he ended up having plans of his own to blow his brains out. So um, ultimately, I guess, why did you think that? Why did you think that Matthew's father didn't deserve to die?
Because well, the only thing he did wrong was rip Christie's clothes off, but then he realized it was wrong, and he didn't want to participate in the whole thing. He didn't rape Christie. He didn't kill anyone. He was actually the one who helped her escape from the others who would have probably raped her more and probably even killed her in the end. So he saved her life, and so I thought it was unfair for her to kill him in return.
Okay. And we ultimately uh, see me. I feel like he could have done more. I feel like he could have taken her not just because he apparently had a truck or some kind of a vehicle himself. He could have taken her out of town and away from it all, and taken her to some kind of authorities if he really thought that hard about it. But I don't. I think because he was that slow and that mentally challenged, he was unable to do that, at least to the full
Yeah.
extent of his capabilities of thought processing. In fact, this whole emotional thing about how he eventually felt. Seemed to eventually help him articulate his words better, even to the other crazed people in the group.
Indeed, yeah.
So, what did you think about the backwoods people of this town? Do you think that they were acceptable people?
Well, if they weren't rapists and murderers, they would have been kind of funny. But since they do what they do, no, they're not acceptable.
No, not at all. But this, for being a 2.5 hour feature, this is pretty straightforward. I mean,
Ye-
um, it's basically kind of the same trope and the same um, mentality of, okay, you fucked with us, and now I'm gonna fuck you up. Kind of a revenge
ye-
tale.
Yeah, it is a little bit predictable after you have seen the original, especially if you have also seen the remake and its sequels.
Do you
But
think that this sequel was told pretty good? Do you think that the acting was pretty good?
I think the acting was amazing, actually. But as far as the story goes, I think there are some plot holes. There were some things that I felt were a bit unrealistic.
Like,
As I mentioned earlier, the mere fact that they kidnapped Jennifer and Christy in broad daylight in a place where there could have been other people around. Then there was the fact that when Jennifer managed to grab a gun, she could have killed those people who she knew were trying to kill her, but she left them alive, which eventually got her killed. So I think after everything that had been done to her, she when she got the gun, she would have probably shot them all just to be safe. And then also the way these people act, okay, I guess it can be attributed to the whole mentality of their town, but then again, this old guy, Henry, when he and his wife took Christy to the graveyard, their original idea was to kill her, supposedly. But then when she survived the whole thing, and in the end, Henry had a gun and he could have killed her, which was seemingly his original plan. But no, instead he shot himself, which I thought was. Don't get me wrong, it was good that she survived, but it was unrealistic if you take his original intentions into account. And then also the fact that Henry and his wife killed Becky when they were originally supposed to be on her side. Maybe no, maybe it was Christy who finished her off, but they were supposed to be on her side, and they beat her up. So yeah, I think there were some inconsistencies in the story, but as far as the acting goes, I think every actor did a really good job.
I think so too. I thought that this definitely brought a level of crazy that you would kind of think that would be in the backwoods of like a no name town. People who are like sequestered away in like some town that doesn't really see a whole lot of business, so they get they feel like they can act how they want to act, and act like they don't have any authority, and only God can judge them.
Mm,
When you have those kind of people where they just They just haven't been around polite society, at least in the modern day, long enough to actually be regular people. Sometimes you kind of get that attitude.
Yeah, I guess.
So, as far as production value, what do you think about the film?
Well, I think the effects were pretty good, especially when Becky decapitated Jennifer. The way they made it look like the head was severed, and you could clearly see the door behind her, where her head would have been if she hadn't been decapitated, and the head on top of her body, it was pretty well done, looked quite realistic.
Okay. I
Um,
thought that the production was pretty good too. I thought that the gore was pretty decent.
yeah,
I thought the effects of the blood looked real. As far as the rapes are concerned, I don't think that they were as bad as they were on film the first time around.
yeah, it
I think it has
was.
something to do with how grindhouse the film looked and how it was shot the first time around,
Well, yeah,
and things like that. You know what I mean?
yeah, I know, but actually, I must say I'm glad that the rape scene wasn't as long as it was in the original, because in the original it was really gruesome and really difficult to watch. So I'm glad they didn't include so much of that here.
Although I am somewhat disappointed that it wasn't. I I guess in a sense, I guess I'm sort of glad too, because it was a violent act. What happened in the first one, and that was kind of the intent, to put you in on the level of what the victim might feel like if they had gone through that kind of violent act. And I think he did what he needed to do the first time around. So the second act didn't need to be as violent. It just needed to make its point.
Yeah, I think so.
So ultimately, what did you think about the music of the film? Did you notice any of the music?
Well, I noticed there wasn't much music, just like in the original. I think there actually wasn't any background music at all, except when some characters were playing some music in a vehicle or something like that.
Yeah, I noticed that too. That there wasn't much as far as that goes. I mean, there's a lot of cool scenery, and I guess it was. I guess this film was filmed in Santa Clarita, California. I guess the cemetery was the Evergreen Cemetery in Los Angeles, California. I guess some of the exterior wood scenes were filmed in Simi Valley, California. So, um,
Ugh.
as far as that goes, so I thought I thought this film was okay. I thought that it was a good sequel. It wasn't it wasn't better than the first one, but it was different seeing Camille Keaton older,
Mm.
and coming back to the role and seeing someone else kind of go through a similar situation. It wasn't the exact situation that her mother went through, but I guess it put her on the level of what her mother might have thought at that point in time. And
Mm.
I guess she kind of found out who her daddy was in the end. Hey.
Yeah. Uh, Well, I must say as I already said, I'm glad that this one didn't have as much. Well, it was brutal, but not as much as the original, and it was somewhat less difficult to watch. Uh, so yeah, to me personally, that's a good thing.
Alrighty. Well, in any case, I think that's all the time that we have for today, folks. So hopefully you enjoyed our discussion for today, and hopefully we gave it a good little run through here. Well, and we're not entirely done with the genre because there have been other films in its ire in the same capacity. There are films that kind of followed suit in the rape film genre. I do believe that we should cover, but next week we're going to be covering The Wizard of Oz. So stay tuned as
That's
we.
that's quite a jump from this one.
Right.
Right.
So join us as we trollop into Munchkin land and find find our way to the Emerald City. So stay tuned
Yeah.
for a fun discussion next week as we go and talk about a classic favorite, at least of the musical genre, at least in my mind. So thank
Indeed.
you, ladies and gentlemen. Like, share, and subscribe. Hopefully you can join us next time. And
Yes.
hopefully you get a chance to check this film out and let us know what you thought down in the comments. So
Yes. Thank you all.